Hello, everyone. Oh, that's better.
Hello.
Oh. Hello?
Hello.
My phone's talking to me as well. I signed in on that one as well, but I'm just gonna.
Oh, look at Sharon. Nice background, Sharon.
We're still admitting a few people, so just bear with us a few more minutes.
Good to see you, Ricky. Oh, still having lunch there. Yeah, very good.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Lovely. Do turn the camera on. Say hello to each other. Say hello also in the chat while everybody's coming in, flooding in. This is a sold out session. Unsurprising, lots of interest in the topic. Great to see it still at the top of your agenda, as it is, of course, on ours.
Oh, hi, Catherine. Yeah, warm there, right? Yeah, warm here too.
It's hot. It's hot everywhere. Yeah, we do have some gentlemen on the line as well, which is fantastic. Or I
Not
should
on
say,
camera yet, though. So if you are a man out there, don't hesitate to turn on your camera.
yeah, turn on your camera and say hello. We're a friendly bunch, aren't we, ladies?
It's nice to see our audience and to see when you're enjoying it, or maybe not so much, right? Just to see you, really. Oh, it's Sarah Fraser there. Hi, Sarah. Saw you pop in for a sec there. Hi, Lucy.
Hi.
Hello, Lucy. Hi, everyone. Good to see you. Good to see everyone online. We're just getting.
Oh, wow. We've got someone in from Johannesburg. Well, I suppose it's hot there regardless, right? For us, 28 or whatever it is, 29 is high. But,
more and more people coming in. So I'm going to let people in, keep stuff. I might need to throw my phone under the train somewhere so I can't hear it. Well, welcome everyone. Let's get started. So people are still coming in, so I will continue to admit people as we go, and that may go on for a few minutes. It's great to see everyone. I'm Rena Goldenberg-Lynch, and I'm one of the two co-founders of the Big Fish Academy, together with Inge, our CEO. And I'm looking forward to speaking to her today on this very topic. A little bit about Big Fish Academy, who we are, and how this all came about. Inge runs her own diversity or gender diversity consultancy called WTO Consulting and Training, and has been doing that for 15 years. And many of you will know that I also am the founder and CEO of Voice at the Table, and I've been running that diversity and inclusion consultancy for about 5 years, 6 years. And working on a project together last year, Inge and I thought it would be that there seems to be a gap in the market for training on diversity and inclusion, specifically for people who work in diversity and inclusion, not necessarily on a full-time basis, but have the remit of doing something around diversity and inclusion in their organization. And that's how the Big Fish Academy came up. We launched in November. We're running training. We have 6 now virtual training sessions in the year that cover a number of different topics. I will also talk to you a bit about the next one that's coming up. And the one thing that many of you will already be familiar with is our expert interviews on different topics, when we speak to people from different areas, from different organizations on the various topics in the diversity and inclusion space. And the topic for this session is how to advance women in organizations. So the format of these sessions is slightly different from our training in that you won't see that many or any slides. It is supposed to be a conversation. So the first and foremost conversation that I will have is with Inge, but we also want to have a conversation with you, everyone on the line. So please do participate. I will throw occasionally questions out to you, or you can put them in the chat, say hello to each other, ask questions. One of our colleagues, Jane Ashley, is also on the line. She is we've given her the role of a producer for this particular session. She will be monitoring the chat for questions, and I will be referring to her once in a while so that we can get your input into it. We'll also attempt a few polls. Hopefully they will run smoothly, and we'll also get some more feedback from you on that basis. So let me introduce you, Inge, properly. So I did mention, Inge, that you run WTO consulting and training, and I know that when we first met many years ago, that one of the passions that we shared in life was about advancing women, and not just advancing them to senior positions, but advancing them just in general. And at that time, I know you were speaking about writing a book about this, and indeed you did write a book about this. So let me introduce you, and maybe you want to say a little bit more about the book and yourself?
Yeah. So, topic gender diversity is something I've been working on for the last 10 years. Initially working with women, but quickly realizing that actually, if you want to make work life easier for women, it's not so much about helping those women, it's actually about changing organizations. Now, I had a background in organizational change, so it was easy for me to make that move and start helping organizations. And then what do you need to change, right? So I started to research more into that, and that's when I wrote the book on gender difference, how are men and women different, and what does that mean for women at work? How can women be gender smart? But also, what does it mean for leaders, for organizations? How can leaders be gender smart? How can organizations be gender smart? So I'll be talking about that today. And if you want to know more detail, because we can't really go in detail about the sort of science behind it, which I reference in my book, then please do check it out online. You can just find it on Amazon.
Thank you for that. And I would like to start with a poll, which it won't let me. First technical issue.
Will I check you? Is it on my poll?
Yeah, would you check to see if you can do that? Because I think apparently didn't like the fact that I've logged on 2 positions. But we will launch a poll in a minute. And what we want to know is why you, our audience, cares about advancing women. Is it personal to you? Is it something that you are interested in more generally for other women in your organizations? What is it that interests you about advancing women in this particular session? Now, Inge, are you able to?
People are voting. I'm not sure you can see it. I've got my second laptop here where I can see people vote. So if you see me looking sideways, that's what I'm looking at.
Yes. So if you
5 people have voted, so we're almost halfway.
Okay, fantastic. And if you for some reason cannot see the poll, or maybe you're on the line, you feel free to pop in your answers into the chat box. What interests you, or what drew you to this particular session? Is it something personal, or is it something that is part of your role, or maybe you're just curious as to what are the views out there?
Yeah, I think we're there. We've got 81% have been able to vote, so I don't think everyone can vote.
Yeah, so we have some views in the chat box already as well. Are you able to share the poll then with us?
I think it is sharing.
I mean the results. Can everybody see the results?
Sorry, so can you not see them, Rena?
No, I can't.
Okay, well, let me read them to you. We've got 13 people saying, I'm a woman who wants to advance herself. And you can only choose one answer, so you had to choose. 15 women saying, I want to advance other women. So for me, it's about being a role model and what I can do for others. And then 19, so which is our top result, I want to know what I can do to increase the number of women in senior roles. And then 3 who had other, who we see in the poll. Bit of both, 1 and 2 for myself and to help others is what people are saying. Someone else, Katia Moreira, saying, I'm a woman, I want to involve, but also I want to advance in my company, which often is the case.
Yeah, and that is what we find as well, is that a lot of it is personal, but a lot of it is also the organization and how we can make it work for other women. Let's start at the very beginning. Inge, let's set the scene first. Why do you think why are we having this session in the first place? What is it? How did the landscape of business evolve that we have to have this kind of conversation still today?
Well, basically, at the moment, just some numbers here. At the moment, there is a target in the UK to have 33% women in senior leadership roles. So that's not just boards, but senior leadership roles. And we are moving ahead there, but very, very glacially. So we currently have 28% women in senior leadership roles and very, very little chief execs. So if women are in the C-suite, they're not the chair or the chief exec. So there's only very few of those. So there is definitely some work to be done, and that work that needs to be done in the pipeline.
And why is that? Why are we
is it that women aren't advancing? Well, I believe, and I mean, not everyone agrees there, but there's my firm belief from what I've seen in research as well, that it is because organizations are designed for men. Men didn't on purpose designing something that was specifically for them. It was just designed for the people who happened to be there. And it was men running those organizations, and it was women running sort of, the home side of things. So when organizations became more research, became more, and you see that in a lot of the management research of the 70s, 80s, even the 90s, leadership research, motivational research, the people that were researched were the people that worked in organizations. And even more specifically, let's say Harvard does a piece of research, they test it on their students. Now, who are those students? At those days, they were 80–90% males. So any research that has been done in leadership or management has also been done on men. And we're only finding now that some of these things aren't actually true for women. So one of the pieces of research here is, for instance, on stress, how women respond differently to stress than men. So there is, or have a wider variety of responses, it was always just fight or flight, whereas now it's fight, flight, or tend and befriend. So there are, so organizations are designed for men. What does that mean? Well, asking women to be successful in those places is like asking a fish to climb a tree. It doesn't quite work. So what do organizations do? They think, oh, this doesn't work for women. Let's go and help those women. Let's coach them. Let's train them. Let's give them leadership training. Let's make sure they have the confidence so they can actually work in the system that we've made. Now, to me, that sounds like asking that fish to grow arms. It can be done. And some women, so go on, Rena,
No, I was going to say, despite the fact that there are so many women now working, most of my female friends are part of a two-income household. They are in a relationship. But I think what you're saying also, that companies haven't evolved their culture so much from the initial way in which business is set up. So let us ask the audience here on this. Do you agree? Does that resemble perhaps your working place? Do you think that businesses, do you agree with the statement that organizations are designed for men and therefore it's harder? And we have another poll. And Inge, I'm so sorry, but
sorry, need to run
the technology is not letting me, despite the fact we tried it. And while you do that, there's a question about whether there are men attending this session, and indeed there are. And I would love if you're one of the men attending the session, do say hello, and please do voice your views. We'd love to hear from you as well, what you think is useful for you from the conversation today.
Yeah, poll is launched.
Poll is launched. So do you agree with the statement that organizations are designed by men?
And meanwhile, can I say something about some of the evidence I have about this, Rena?
Please.
While people are thinking themselves, basically, some of the evidence that I get is where you see women are moving out of organizations. So initially, we in a lot of organizations nowadays, 50-50 of the hires are 50-50 is hard, 50% male, 50% female. But you go to the higher levels, you see women move out. And the reasons they give is things like, I felt excluded, I felt undervalued, I didn't think I was heard. I was looking up, and what I saw wasn't quite for me. So women didn't enjoy it there. I didn't like the culture. It didn't feel right for me. And it's not just one woman who says that. And then obviously it's a lot of women who say that. And then obviously there's the balance with work life. So if you have something at home that is where you are valued or where you feel you're very much needed and you feel no one needs you at work and you're not included, the decision is very, very easy to make. So some of the other evidence that I have there, yeah, we still haven't got everyone to have a think, join in the chat if you're not sure yet about this. Another evidence, I recently did a workshop with senior engineers. So these are all women sort of, yeah, let's say with at least 10 years of work experience as an engineer. And I did a workshop group with men and one with women separately. And I asked them, so what has enabled you in your career? And then I asked them, so what has been the barriers? So what enabled the men, I mean, it was their own efforts. They thought they'd done brilliantly. Also their boss. I was doing great. I was getting the results. Then I heard that in my annual review and that I happened to be in the right time, right place and got the promotion. For women, none of these arguments were top or actually even mentioned. The things women mentioned were like, I had a really good coach. So there was one person in the organization, which could be their boss, but often was someone else who helped me and supported me. Some women actually even mentioned, I went outside the organization, won some awards, and then suddenly I was recognized. Other women mentioned that they had to move organizations because they were valued and seen. So I thought that was really interesting how out of those 15 people in the one group, yeah, that they were just saying the systems that we currently have, the annual review, our management works for me and for my promotion. And women just never seem to be in the right place, right time, get the right results that led to promotion. So I thought
it's interesting. So let's check on the poll. And while we do that, there's some discussion on the chat that I'm following as well about, you know, the women do advance to senior positions, and particularly a very sort of traditional style organization, they tend to be women who perhaps don't have other priorities. So they might not have children, or in other ways, the way I see it is also that they, in other ways, other than being men, resemble some of the types, the design that companies were set up with. So what does the poll say?
Yeah, it's sort of a bit different from the chat, I think, because 24% of people, so that's 12 people, they agree, definitely true. And then we have 67% who somewhat agree, but feel that huge efforts have been made. Yeah. So that's 34 people. And there are 2 people who say, no, I don't see any difference whatsoever.
Okay,
and that's great. That are typing in the chat, of course.
Yeah, lots of opinion in the chat, and we'll visit those in a second. I just want to start talking about those differences. If we buy into this idea that organizations were designed by men for men, and despite the fact that we are evolving the structure and the culture of those organizations, what are some of these differences that we, how are women behaving differently? You've given some ideas to us already, but what else have you found?
Yeah, so any questions, right? I mean, we're going through this really quickly. So any questions, I mean, feel free to, to give opinions, throw questions in the chat, and we can pick them up as we go along as well. So yeah, what are those differences? Well, in my book, I identify 5, which I identify basically based on looking at the literature available at the time, which was 3 years ago. And I'm saying at the time because a lot has been published on this topic in the last 3 years. So, and I'll take some of that into my talks as well, but you can't find that in my book. And the first difference, and then I sort of amalgamate that to 5 key differences. And the biggest one, I think, underlying a lot of them is how men and women compete. So men typically, and obviously this is not true for all men, let me put that caveat, but the average man competes on being the best, the biggest, the fastest, the strongest. You know, you see that on the playground where little boys have conversations like, and this is when they're like 3, 4, 5 years old. Well, look at my muscles. Well, my dad's got a bigger car than your dad. So they do it very obviously. Then when they grow up, men become much more specific about it. They're brilliant at gaming, or they're brilliant at DIY, or they're brilliant at leadership. So they choose their area that they choose for the status, or some men choose for status, others choose for brilliance in a particular skill. So it becomes much more refined and much more subtle. My son, when he was 8, he already started saying, well, obviously I'm not supposed to boast. However, I did score that goal. So they also learn to be much visible about it. Now, women are not known to be so competitive. However, they are fiercely competitive. But women compete on something else. Women compete on being nice, being liked. So this is what's going on in the playground, where girls are exchanging friendship booklets. And when they say things like, oh, what do you think of my drawing? They don't think they've made a rubbish drawing. They just want to get confirmation from other girls that they're nice, they're liked, they're still being friends. Yeah, you made an amazing drawing, your dress looks amazing, you know, grown-up women complimenting each other. All of that is saying, I still like you, you're still a nice person, and it puts you higher up in the hierarchy. Now, when I tell this to women, they tell me, actually, that's not true. Women aren't nice at all, which is part of that, you know. In order to compete, you need to look as if you are a nice person. So that's the sort of thing that's going on at the water cooler, where there's like 3 women. Oh, we're no longer at the water cooler nowadays, right? So this may be happening a lot less on Zoom. But when pre-COVID, you'd see women saying things like, did you hear what Natasha said about Samira? I can't believe she did that. Instantly putting me as a much more likable person than both Natasha and Samira, so putting myself up in the hierarchy. So that being liked isn't as visible as your status, the money you have, the size of your house. So women need to do a lot more sort of things around that. Now, what does that mean? That as a woman, if you grow up in a culture where you need to be seen as being nice and liked, you cannot put your hand up and put yourself forward. Because if you say, I want to lead, other women are going to ostracize you, other girls, right? This happens at a very young age. So even if you have that very male way of putting yourself forward and saying you're good at something, then you're not going to be accepted by the other girls. So girls that have that are also taught that this is not how you behave. So as a result, it's much more easier for women to be overlooked in companies, and women need to then be taught at age sort of 20 or 25 when they join organizations that they need to speak up. They need to be taught that you're not always asked for things or asked for your opinion, but you need to voice it, that you need to be very assertive in how you voice your opinion and how good you are about yourself.
Jane, let me go to you. Is there anything that you'd like to share from the chat at this moment?
Yeah,
On this?
Yeah, I think not surprisingly, with the situation at the moment with lots of women working from home and also, you know, homeschooling and everything, a lot of people's focus is on the additional load on women at the moment, but also when they're in the workplace. And we're kind of asking ourselves, is there responsibility on us as working mothers to ask our partners to share the load more, or do we just accept that load sort of unwillingly?
I'd say that's probably another difference between, would you say, Inge, the way men behave and women behave?
Well, it is sort of linked to some of these differences that let me talk about the 3 differences that I wanted to highlight, and then come back to that point. But I think it is linked to how we are, how our culture, the girl culture, the female culture socializes us to, or perhaps even more natural, to actually take up that burden, because also men and women think differently. So when I say that, men typically think more focused, one thing at the time, one topic at the time, one priority. Women are more inclined to think big picture. Okay, if we're taking this decision now, then how does that impact other people? How does that impact the future? If we're actually, if we're deciding to buy this car now, what does that mean for our children? What does it mean for our finances? What does it mean in 5 years' time? So women, see that bigger picture, and men are more sort of focused on that, on the moment, the one thing at the time, typically. So as a result, women ask more questions. They would ask, why are we doing this initiative? Why are we taking this forward? They would be more likely to say, okay, you're suggesting this, but I see this problem, this issue, and this issue coming up. Now, typically in organizations, people love to take action, move forward, see the priorities, and men often see these questions as if women don't know what they want. oh, she's asking all these questions. That's not really leadership behavior. She doesn't have a vision. Oh, she's asking why. Clearly, she doesn't trust my leadership or my opinion. So this, in the male culture, asking questions and saying why shows weakness. And whereas in a female culture, this is all, asking questions shows that you care about people, that you value people, that you want to hear their opinion. It creates buy-in. So it's not that men and women can't learn from each other. Some women are very, very focused, especially after sort of 10 years in business. Some men have also learned that you need, a lot of men learn that you need to create buy-in and ask questions, but it's more what you sort of have to learn and what you sort of naturally inclined to do. And as a result, women have more to learn to fit into that system. And then linking that to flexible working and why it is that women pick up that burden, I think that is really linked to, you know, if you've been taught to be nice and liked, and you expect also your partner to ask questions and ask why, the sort of thing women do, and I mean, I do that myself too, is like, oh, how about this weekend I go horse riding? My husband will be like, no, that's actually not very convenient because I have an appointment. Oh, okay, so I don't go horse riding, right? Now, he will do that very differently. And I spoke about it with some friends, and they have husbands that do very much the same thing. And this may not be your husband, right? It's just one example. But they will go, oh, I'm actually away on Saturday doing golf with the boys. And they also feel they deserve that because they've worked really hard all week. So for women then to say, actually, no, wait a minute, that's not very suitable, is much, much harder to do because they can already see the consequences. They can see what that means for the children. They can see what it means for next weekend. So and also then because they haven't really learned to sort of, they're not used to sort of taking that space because other girls give each other more space. It is much easier for women to then forget about that. So as a woman in your relationship, you need to sort of learn that male culture, and you need to learn to say, and that is, I think, one of the reasons that women pick up the burden, apart from many others. But
it's great. Your relationship, if you are in one, is a great practicing ground, isn't it? Let me ask the audience. We've had some interaction on this already. Does that resonate? Do you recognize that in your organization? We have another poll on this topic. Do you recognize these differences?
Well, I've got a third one. Do we have time for the third difference, or do we need to move on?
Oh, sorry, you already did that one.
No, that's all right. Do we need to move on?
Yeah, let's move on. I want to cover also what we can do about it. Of
course.
course.
Very good. That's good.
These are the reason that we're talking about these differences right now as we launch the poll is because it's important to understand perhaps why women are not advancing in the same way as men in organizations, and also to help then restructure and reshape the culture and the structure of the organization to allow for women to be able to advance without changing women, without fixing us. You know, we're as good as we are, and there's a reason we are like we are. But do you recognize these differences in the workplace? Have you seen this play out? I can see by some of the feedback in the chat that is indeed the case. Many different examples. Inge, how's it going on the poll?
Yeah, I was just reading the comments, which are all super interesting as well. And just wanted to add there, women can achieve the same as men, right? So when I say men and women are different, we can achieve the same, but we may go about it in a different way. And the way women go about it is typically less visible, less recognized as a leadership style. It's not the way that we expect typical leaders to behave. It's not the role model of leadership that we have typically seen of the strong, powerful, assertive leader. So it is less seen, less recognized, less valued. But actually the results are the same. And if you have both styles in your organization, you can really get some amazing results. So I'm all for gender balance. Let me see what.
And that's the reason that a lot of organizations have taken up the baton, and it's not just because they're being friendly and nice, which of course is an important part of it as well, but it's also because they can see the benefits to the organization, to their culture, to reflecting our society outside of the office. Yes. So does the audience agree?
Let me see. The audience does agree, but we have, yeah, only 65% have voted. So a lot of people want us to probably put something in the chat.
Yes, yes.
You're not sure? Put something in the chat, and then I'll end the polling and share the results. So results are almost 80% if you agree that indeed in some of these areas you do take a different approach. So really interesting that you recognize some of that, right? Then also 6 people say, no, I don't. So that's 15%. And then 2 people are typing in the chat.
Okay. Okay.
And I love Rebecca. Can I pick up on Rebecca there in the chat? It seems to me that these differences in character, in personality and motivation, in gender culture, challenge the assertion that the organization is flawed, designed for man, but rather the people in it are flawed and their habits and attitude must change. So, and how is the design of organizations the problem to solve? So yeah, that is the next question that we want to answer for you. So
yeah, let's go on. Thank you for the prompt, Rebecca. What can organizations do about their design?
Because quickly looking in the chat, I noticed a lot of you, and that is also something that women do a lot more than men. Okay, something is wrong, then how can I change that? So we need to speak up, we need to find our voice, we need to be more confident. This is not what I recommend. Obviously, if you want to get ahead, go ahead, do all those things. But I like to look at the bigger picture. We need to change organizations. We need to create places where those fish can actually swim, where swimming is valued, where we create places where swimming is taught and where you get improved to swim and get better at what you're good at already. So what does that then mean in practice? Well, first of all, when you want to change organizations and make them places where that female culture is accepted and valued, you need to change the entire organization. So that requires changes in the organization, changes in the leadership style. And in order to do that, you need to have a real business approach. So just starting a women's network, doing some women's coaching programs or some mentoring is not gonna, it's gonna be great for women, they're gonna love it and they're gonna find their voices, but it's not going to help them advance. And we know that from like all the research that's been done in that, it doesn't move the figures. So what does is an actual change approach. So you need to link to the business, say, these are the targets we want to achieve. This is why it's good and how it's going to help us achieve our business strategy. So it helps you with your talent, it helps you with your innovation. Why is it that the business is driving this? Set objectives, make people accountable and have a proper budget. So any organization that says to me, we do this with volunteers, I hesitate, thinking that that's going to give any results. You know, a voluntary, let's say you want to change a health and safety culture. Everyone needs to have a real health and safety mindset. And people would say, let's get a network of people who are passionate about health and safety. And that will make everyone aware. That's not how you create these changes, right? So the same with this, if you really want to create an organization that works for both men and women, and where women advance, you need to have the proper systems in place. Next, you need buy-in from your leadership, lead from the top people at the top need to walk the talk. Then you need to make some changes in your organization and in the leadership. So what do you need to change in your organization? One of the key parts, and I mean, I could tell you 100 things, but so I had to, Rena made me choose 1 or 2, is transparency. Making it really transparent what you need to do to move up. What kind of competencies do you need to have? How can you get those competencies? Because once that is really clear, transparent framework, you no longer have to advocate for yourself. And if you do, it becomes much easier because you can say, look, I tick those boxes. So then so if you create more of a school-like system, and obviously then it is going to be more effective for women. Women do incredibly well in schools, unfortunately better than boys actually. So when you make it more transparent, that typically helps women. Measuring skills also works. We could take the bias out. And also then look at the language you use in your job descriptions. In the language you use, do you focus on people? Do you focus on helping others? Do you focus on the impact of this role? Because these are things women typically look at. In your competencies, and I have that a lot with clients, we look at the competencies in a role and they measure, for instance, to move ahead to a senior role, You need to have external client experience, and you need to have worked on an innovative project, say. But then implicitly, when we talk about it, it turns there are a number of human skills or soft skills that are implicitly assumed, like you can build relationships with clients, you can explain difficult concepts to clients, but those aren't on the list. Now, these are typically the things that women would be more likely to excel on, but they aren't measured, they aren't seen. So looking at those competencies is another key one, and the language you use around that. Then leadership changes. Well, people were already suggesting that in the chat, right? This is about leaders understanding that women may have different preferences, that ambition may look different in women, that there are other ways of leading than that one role model that we see of the strong male. So what you can do there is, for instance, inclusive behavior training is very effective where bias and differences and preferences are addressed. Another thing you can do is reverse mentoring, where senior leaders work with women, and that's been very effective in helping those women take different action, but also helping those men see that when women ask questions, have doubts, may get more emotional, they actually overcome this. So this is when men get emotional, well, they're actually near a burnout on average, right? When women get emotional all the time, but it's just a little dip, you know, you get over it and you move on and you solve your problems. So when senior men work with those high potential women, they see that these women move on. So they really learn more about that style of women. So yeah, that's sort of the top 3 things to do. Business approach, change, make your organization more transparent, use language that works for women, and change your leadership and get them to understand there are different styles.
And I suppose generally what that means, it is a redesign to accommodate for how women live, think, and behave and prefer, compete, all of those things that you mentioned, to make the organization reflect that in its culture. And breaking it out into those top ways of doing it is very, very helpful. And is that something that you've seen in your organizations already? Have you seen organizations try and address changes in that way? Rebecca, I'd love to hear from you as well. At the BBC, have you seen this? There's been a lot going on recently. Just one, and I know that you work on inclusion and inclusive leadership in particular. If you have anything that you can type in, do share your views, ladies and gentlemen. If you're on there, have you seen any of these changes? Do you, or perhaps you have stories to share? So Inge, thank you for that. These are the few things that the maybe top 3, 4 things that organizations can do, and there are many different other ones. What about women themselves? I mean, we've got this in the chat, it's come up before, so you know there's quite a bit going on in the chat about, you know, having early conversations with boys about that, and I think that's true of society more generally, but we're focusing on organizations. So as a woman, can you help redesign yourself? What can you do?
Yeah, I think as a woman, there is a lot you can do, but it isn't the typical, I'm not going to say the typical, oh, you've got to build your confidence. I'm going to make it much more, and speak up. I'm going to make it much more specific. You need to build your confidence about what you're good at, how you work. Become really aware of how you work. Women often say, oh yeah, everyone can do what I do. No. Ask feedback and find out what is it that you do differently and how is that adding value. So you become really aware of how you add value to the team. And that may be in one of those ways that because you ask more questions or you typically create buy-in, but that may also be other ways, right? Women typically are good at, for instance, read signals, facial signals, emotional signals, more often than men do. So maybe you have some strength around that. Maybe you have really other strengths. So becoming aware of your specific strengths and then communicating your way of working. So now that you've got the evidence that you're contributing, you can start speaking up about it. So be very formal about this, actually, right? Women, it's really hard to do this informally for women because there is all kinds of boys networks and places where men do this informally already for years. So for women, you need to set up those formal meetings with your boss, with your boss's boss throughout the organization, and actually then talk about how you work and what you want to achieve. So instead of sort of just generally speaking up, you need to speak up. This is how I typically work with a team to create buy-in, and I guide them with my questions so we can achieve this. And this is what you'll see happen in my team. But it's often said, oh, women have really easy teams. Yeah, it was easy for her. Or they get difficult people as a result, actually. So it's not women have easy teams, right? They've actually already noticed what was going on, created buy-in before the problem happened. And that is a very invisible type of leadership. So you've got to make that visible. You've got to talk with your boss about your style, if you recognize this, right? About your style of working, and explain what you're trying to achieve and how you're doing that up front.
And I suppose it also goes to that point about fixing women, I suppose, is what Rebecca says also. And I find that, you know, one of the responses I get a lot from women, particularly when they're promoted, is, oh, I don't want to be promoted because I'm a woman, or I don't want to be seen as being promoted. I want to be promoted on merit. To which I say, actually, it's to be promoted as a woman because you're a woman, because that is an added benefit, is a different perspective that perhaps is currently missing at that level. So embrace the opportunity and own it, own yourself. And you know, this point about confidence as well. I mean, I started at the table thinking I'm going to empower women, I'm going to make them more confident, but of course we are very confident at what we do. It's how it shows up, and also the fact that if you constantly feel that your performance is undervalued at work because you're doing things differently, that can chip away at one's confidence, of course. So what I say now is own the fact that you do things differently, own the fact that you have feelings and emotions, that you express them already, or many variations of them at work, because that is what the organization is missing, having been created by men for men, going back to the starting blocks. What else, Inge? What else can we do?
Yeah, I think those are all super, super good points. Yeah, and I like what Rebecca's saying as well. A lot of organizations focus on fixing the women, and it's about fixing the organizations. Now, if you are on this call and you want to know, how can I fix my organization? What I have tried is take my book and do speeches about this, and I still do, or workshops, but they're actually very hard to sell. Most male managers are completely not interested in, and they're like, oh, do I need to manage women differently? You know, it becomes this sort of, managing women conversation. So what I find much more effective is to just give them actions. So nowadays, I actually leave most of the difference away. I talk a bit about bias and preferences, and then I say, and here are the things you need to do. So I teach them, you need to encourage women. You need to invite them to the ball, I say. You know, women like to be asked. So invite them, ask them, and then tell them why you ask them. Show them, this is what I've seen you do. I said, because women often find that difficult to see, right? So you tell them, this is what I see you do. This is why I'm asking you, and I think you'd be really good at this role. And I said, and then ask them, whether they'd like to do it. Listen to their answer. And then if they say, well, it doesn't fit in around childcare, or solve those problems. So start those conversations, start asking them. And I mean, I've seen that be very, very effective. When senior leaders really want this, then they can make it happen by just starting that dialogue, starting those questions, starting to invite women at the table. And then another thing I say is about making the systems transparent. It's also a really easy thing you can do in your organization. You don't have to, or easy, but you know, it doesn't require massive amounts of buy-in to say, well, could we just publish a bit more about what the next steps are? Could we be clear about or could we look in this organization about how you get to the next role, and do some interviews with people about that next role? Or something that's also been very effective, where women are looking at senior people and they think, oh, you have to be a certain way in that role. That doesn't suit me. So I don't want that sort of role, like sales roles, for instance. Women often are not in sales roles, and the sales roles give access to the C-suite often, right? Because you need to have that bottom line responsibility for a number of years to get in the C-suite. So then to say to women, what they do is to show women that these roles can be done differently. So I've worked in organizations where they made little videos, where they interviewed people on how they did these sales roles, or you can do blogs or stories, or somehow show women what can be done. And these are all sort of small things that you can start doing without having to talk about massive organizational changes, or women are very different, and get everyone to buy into that concept.
And of course, and absolutely agree with everything that you said, but let's also remember that it's not just them doing it for us and with us. Us women it's not just about ourselves, but the kind of things that we can do for other women as well. What can we do for women? I mean, a lot of us on here are probably managers of teams, big teams. What can we do? What can we do to help them?
Yeah, I think the key here is to amplify how women work. So to sort of subliminally start changing that culture by, when you see another woman work in a female way, looking at the bigger picture, taking decisions where she looks at, which is one of the other differences, taking decisions where she involves the impact on people. When you see other women implicitly managing a team, highlight it, say, gosh, it's impressive, right? How she always has easy teams. Or say, it's interesting, right, how she's so emotional, because that really wins us clients, that really authentic approach. So start highlighting what you see other women do. If you see a woman being interrupted, then wait for a moment and then say, I think Rena had a point. Can we just get that point? I'd love to hear that. And actually, I've seen some men do that very effectively too. So making men aware that women are more easily overlooked and less often invited at the table. So invite other women at the table. Say, actually, we've got a couple of places here. I think you would be suitable. So these are all things that you can do to help other women. Sort of show them, build their confidence by showing them what they're good at. Helping them understand, helping them put them forward and amplify how they work.
And I think I love that point about, women speaking out and speaking up on behalf of other women. I think that's very important, and give these women a voice. And Jane makes a good point that sometimes it takes some time in life to get to the point where you are less concerned about other people's views and can express yourself more freely. Absolutely, it does. But I think when we reach that point, and I have reached it about 10 years ago, let's make sure that we start helping when we see the same things that we have experienced in our teams. When we see that, let's help those women. Let's take them under our wing, or encourage them to speak up, and ask them to make their point out loud when they whisper alongside what they think the opinion is a particular point. So there are lots of things that we women need to be doing as well for other women as well. What about any other views on that from the audience? What have you seen that helped, or how have you helped other women? Is there anything that we can take away from your experience here? Please pop that into the chat. And we're getting close to reaching. I want to round it up to see if are there any specific things that you would like, or if there's one thing that you think is the most important thing to take away from this session, Inge, for everyone on the call. What would it be? And while you think about that, I'll check in with Jane as well to see if there's anything that we want to highlight from the chat. It's moving so fast that maybe we just need to revisit some of these points. Is there anything there, Jane?
One point I've picked up, Rena, that I'd like to highlight is about intersectionality.
Yes.
Where obviously when I talk about women, I often talk about my own experience. Rena talks about her own experience. We are obviously white, middle class women with a certain, a level of education and career experience. So what we're talking about applies across the board internationally, but also for LGBT women, Black women, Asian women, transgender women experience this really interesting because they go through the change and then are treated differently or have to get used to another culture. So some very interesting things going on there. But the point is they're experiencing some of these same things, and at the same time, they have other barriers that they come up against that have to do with the fact that they happen to be Black, they happen to be Asian, they happen to have a different religion or a different sexuality. So there is those areas as well that we haven't really addressed today, but that are very important to mention, I believe.
And you make a very good point, and I do want to emphasize that as well, because whatever it is that we say, we think, we experience, it is experienced doubly or triply as much with women and people generally who have other types of sort of designated minority status applied to them. I remember when I watched Michael Kimmel's talk on TED Talks, Michael Kimmel's talk, Why Gender Diversity is Good for Everyone, Men Included, which if you haven't watched, please do. Michael Kimmel. It's very entertaining, full of data. But his journey into this area started when he was doing his master's or PhD, I can't remember. And he was part of a study group, and they were talking about the gender differences. And one of the women in the group was a Black woman. And she said to another white woman, she says, "What do you see when you look in the mirror?" And the white woman said, "Well, I see a woman." And she says, "Oh, that's interesting, because when I look in the mirror, I see a Black woman." And that shows that special, the additional challenges that race in this particular case adds to gender factor, and we must be aware of it. And we do have a session on ethnicity later in the year as well. We're dedicating this one to women more generally, but we're addressing disability next month, and then ethnicity later on. I want to say October or November, I think it is.
Yeah, and it'd be good. Initially, I thought we should have done it now with Black Lives Matter being so prominent. Yeah. I think it'd be really nice to have it in November, and also look back, and because a lot of organizations are taking action at the moment. So to look back at what they are doing and what you can learn from that once we've gathered some more of that information.
Yeah. So Inge, one final point. What would you say is the one takeaway that you would offer? If there's one thing that people would remember, what would be?
I think the key is to remember that fish, that don't go grow arms, focus on your strengths, focus on, but look at what you're good at and start becoming vocal about that, and help other women do that same thing. And if you can, putting that, I read that on the chat, lovely, putting the ladder back down and helping other women up is vital, because it is harder for women. If you're expected to climb trees and you've been given fins, that is just a lot harder. So people need to, you need some support there.
Exactly, and I think it's a great point. And the other one for me is about remembering that all those stereotypes that men apply to women apply to women as well. So we are just as bad at judging each other and holding each other to certain standards that shouldn't be there. So let's keep that in mind. We have one final poll for you. It's a feedback poll, the result of which we will not share, but we would love to hear your views on that. And while we're launching that, a couple of things. One is, I would love for you to pop in one word, one sentence, if you like, something that you will do differently as a result of what you've heard here today. And those of you who know me well know that this is something I always do at the end of our sessions. And I think we need to reflect on what we've heard, and make a commitment to do something differently. What will that be for you? Pop that into the chat and share that with us, everybody else, if you could. And in the meantime, Inge, have we launched the feedback poll?
Yeah, we have. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, fantastic. So
yeah, we've got 50%
I'm asking everyone to multitask, which is a lot. So maybe do the poll first, and then pop in your one thing that you will do differently as a result.
Ivana, I've got a great, she says, look out for my own biases, is what Ivana has
Lovely,
said.
lovely.
I mean, what can you do, Ivana? Just, I mean, to check your own bias. What specifically, any tips there? Love to hear how you do that. How do you
Yeah.
check your own bias?
Well, and of course, being a little bit more self-aware and asking whether the decisions that you made are made for a particular reason, and testing them. But yes, anybody who has any ideas on how to mitigate biases, please share in the chat as well. And while we do that, I want to also alert you to what's coming up with the Big Fish Academy. So the next thing on our agenda is a training session around how to select and design impactful initiatives. We did talk about the fact that you do need to have impactful initiatives. A lot of what's being done or has been done isn't very impactful. It uses a lot of resources, it uses a lot of time without making change really happen. So we're going to tackle that on the 9th and 10th of July. That session, you can sign up. We will obviously share that with you via our newsletter, but it's also available on Eventbrite and our websites. And you can sign up for that session and come along. It's a virtual session that actually Inge is running as well. And the next month, as I said earlier, our next expert interview will be on disability in the workplace with Paul Diemer, who's the head of D&I. Inge, in what company? I couldn't see that. He's a colleague of
Yeah,
yours.
he's in the NHS Employers Organization.
Okay.
So it's for leaders in the NHS that they support.
Leaders in the NHS. So we'll be hearing from him on disability in the workplace. I think that is also a hot topic on the agenda nowadays, because of course working from home, as we all are at the moment, makes it a lot easier for people with certain disabilities to work. So it has actually opened up a lot of channels for people to contribute more. So that's on the agenda now.
And some tips on bias that, yeah, are typically the things that we teach as well in the unconscious bias training that we do, right? Which is stop and think. Why did you judge what you said? Read the opposing information too. So don't just read what confirms your own view. Read the opposing information. I would say also just go out of your way to actually meet people a bit different from yourself and include them in conversations. Work with those people that you wouldn't naturally work with. Try it out, you know, put yourself out of your comfort zone and see what you can learn from. And I mean, I have done that a few times over the last year, and it was rather, yeah, how to say that? I got really, really surprised by how much my own biases were in there, you know, and I got proved wrong about a number of things. So, which is lovely in a positive way, right? Where you think, oh, I'm not sure this person can deliver this, and they did, and more. So yeah, really good to start seeing the strength in people that are complementary to yourself, have different experiences.
Yeah, and it is great to be always learning new things about yourself and others as well. Right, okay, so have we closed the poll then?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for your contribution. We will be sending along the recording so you can re-listen to it and revisit some of the conversation today. We will also, if you have any questions on anything that was mentioned on the talk today, perhaps any articles or resources, just drop us a line and we will share those with you. And we look forward to welcome you next month or to see you at one of our training sessions. Thanks very much for your contribution. Take care. Have a great day.
Thank you all. And great things in the
Inge.
chat. Yeah, we need to think of a way to share that. That looks like some really good things in
we'll
the
have
chat.
to see, yes. And thank you, Jane.
Good to see you all. See you soon.